Ross, welcome to Hill-Stead.
Oh, thanks for having us.
We're glad the weather cooperated for this visit of yours.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Up here on the west lawn, we call it, is a great point to look at this beautiful house. It's a grand house owned by two people, Mr. and Mrs. Pope, who came to Farmington because their daughter was living here. They wanted to leave an urban area to come to the natural world of Farmington, which was a farming town. All right, so now we're leaving the west lawn to come to a more intimate part of the garden. That's a stone wall lined sunken garden, and you step down into a deeper enclosure. It's lined with yews, and then it's filled with 90 different kinds of perennials. And we have this wonderful shaded area that they called the summer house. We have poetry reading here, people sketch down here, you can have your wedding ceremony here. All right, so now we've just come down from the lawn, down the steps into the sunken garden, which is below grade. And so it's always kind of cool down here, believe it or not. And it allows you to really take in the sense of the flowers that are in here. There's 90 varieties of perennials. Those are plants that come up every year. And we have 4 types of annuals. And almost all the plants are planted for their fragrance and their color. The color of the flowers were chosen by the landscape architect, whose name is Beatrix Farren. Beatrix was inspired by the Impressionist art inside, and so we have pale purples and pinks and a lot of white, because when we get in to see the paintings by Monet, they're pink and purple and white. So the garden matches the art inside. In the summer, we have a summer poetry festival, so you can sit on your lawn chair smelling these flowers and listening to nationally recognized poets or local poets, and we have music too. So it's really a magical spot that Theodate Pope has created for our enjoyment.
Now, Theodate was the Pope's daughter, correct?
Yes.
Now, she was the main architect for most of this here?
Yeah, she was the building architect, and she worked with a prestigious firm called McKim, White. She also was the landscape architect. So welcome inside Hill-Stead. Now we've come from the garden through the carriage porch and into the dining room. And it's a fairly informal entrance because most visitors were here for a meal. So we keep the table set as if a meal is about to happen. And when Theodate inherited the house from Mom and Dad, she put their family portraits here. So it's a great way to start the tour, kind of the family portrait gallery. So over the fireplace in the dining room is really the first place you see one of their great art treasures. And this painting, it's actually a pastel called Jockeys. It's of horses, and it's by the famous French impressionist named Edgar Degas. And Degas liked the races, he liked the ballet, and he liked the figure. You come in from the dining room and into the living room or the drawing room, and you've got more art. You also have their 1901 Steinway, so someone probably after a big dinner might be playing the piano for us. And we can look at the other painting by Degas. He liked, as I said, the horses, which we have one in the other room. He liked the dancers, and in this case, Dancers in Pink really sets off the whole palette for this room. There's a lot of pink in this room. Next to the Dancers in Pink is a woman with a guitar by another artist named Monet, and this kind of performance and music kind of set the tone for this room because they had a lot of concerts in here. Over the fireplace is a painting by Monet, and on either side of the room is paintings by Monet. So Monet was an environmentalist. He was an outdoor enthusiast. He painted what they call en plein air, or out of doors. And he would take his easel, and he would come out, and this is called haystacks or grain stacks white frost effect. And he might work on that every morning for a couple weeks because the light would change. He'd have his morning picture, and then he'd have his afternoon picture, and then he'd have his late afternoon picture.
Hey Ross, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Welcome to Hill-Stead.
Thank you.
Good. Well, we're going to do a little nature walk today. And Hill-Stead is my favorite place to do that. So these trails are kind of historic. And I'll tell you about that, but I'm also going to show you everything we see is a teachable moment. We're going to look at birds and flowers and all the rest. Theodate Pope was an interesting person. She was raised to great wealth but wanted a farm. And she designed the house here and the farm, and it was very, very important to her. She had a very forward-looking attitude. And her farm was sort of cutting edge. The idea being that she would help the average ordinary farmer increase their yield if she found methods that would do that. And she did. She found methods that would make the cows give more pounds of milk. So she's a really cool lady. What I'm interested in is capturing people and getting them interested in being outdoors. And if you can begin an appreciation, it changes your life every time you go out the door, because you are walking along and your experience is not just one dimension. It can be many dimensions. It can be the bird you hear. It can be, looking at the flower in a different way. It can be what's coming up from the crack in a sidewalk. And, to me, this is what life is all about. Well, I came here to Miss Porter's, and I used to come up to the property, way back then. I'm not going to say how long ago it was. More recently, it happened that Cindy Cormier, who is the curator and educator here, found me and knew that this position was coming up, and she talked to me about it, and it sounded like heaven to me. Imagine coming, it's like coming home for me. So we've got some goldenrod going and some New York ironweed. We don't usually see those things until August, but they're here now, and also some very pretty queens and lace as we go down the farm road. This road is historic, as are many of our trails. Teddy Roosevelt was a guest here, Henry James. They used to use the paths as a carriage road. So they would get into their little, old-fashioned carriage and ride around out there in the woods. Henry James said that this was the epitome of what a country house should be. This, by the way, is the beginning of the Bittersweet Trail. There's another trailhead up beyond, but you can pick up a trail map right in here. And the trails are very easy. Anyone can do them. Families, no families. If you did every single trail, it's 3 miles, but many of them are far less. And they're accessible trails. And really, they take you through a lot of different environmental areas. You got the meadow, you've got this bittersweet area that's covered with this invasive vine, but it is pretty. And then you go through a very deep woodland area and a swampy area. And it's lovely. You can see a lot of different things in a small package, as it were.
So this is all natural. You guys don't interfere at all with any of this?
No, we try to keep it as native as we can. We have done some projects that increase the amount of native plants and decrease the ones that are invasive. We do take some of those out. You can't imagine, you bring children to a place like this and you ask them, for example, where do eggs come from? And they often will say, Stop and Shop, because they don't understand what the process is before that, and because farms are so unusual today. So I think that this is a very important beginning, for sort of bringing the farm back.
Now, you guys do the farmers markets too. That's every Sunday?
Every Sunday, 11 to 2. More fun than you can imagine. People buy, bread and cheese and go and sit and have a picnic. They go for a walk on the trails after. It's really fun.
Now, if you don't mind me asking too, you seem to have a lot of knowledge about the plants and the animals. Now, did you study this in school, or?
Well, like a lot of naturalists, I am somewhat self-taught. I have done some academic work in it, but I'll tell you honestly, my father, when I was a little girl, we lived in a place with some woods, and he had a bird feeder, and he used to tell me what the little birds were, and I got hooked. I think nature is just always new information, and that's what I love.
You did mention that you do have a blog that you guys do here at the Hill-Stead, correct?
We do. It's a lot of fun. It's the Hill-Stead Nature blog, and it talks about what is happening in the natural world here, but also through the prism of some history and some literature and just interesting facts. Like 41,000 people look at it.
And it was from different countries and everything you would say.
15 different countries, and after a while I stopped counting because I thought, well, I get it. There's a lot of people out there who like this.
Now that's something you guys constantly update, so people should try to check back and see what's going on.
Absolutely.
So Diane, we also have activities for wintertime here, correct?
Oh, sure. You can cross-country ski, you can do your snowshoeing. If the snow is not too big, you can just hike along in your boots, but we're open, you know, every day of the year. The trails are here for people pretty much dawn to dusk, and we hope people will take advantage of them. It doesn't cost anything. And it's just as beautiful in winter as it is today. So we do a lot of different things. There's something for everybody. You know, poetry, music, farmers markets, nature walks, gallery talks, you know, famous art. It's certainly in keeping with Theodate Pope's. She had sort of a tradition of hospitality. She didn't build gates. She wanted to have the property feel like a welcoming place. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is to experience Hill-Stead in the way you want to experience what's good for you. Do you want to just come and sit and, you know, soak in the atmosphere? That's fine too. You know, it's all just there for the taking. It's just